Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Chanel Serrano, and welcome to Tips of the Day for Single Moms of Faith. If you have been following me, especially for the last few videos, I have been doing a series on domestic violence. And with Domestic Violence Awareness Month being October, I am sharing several videos on the first video was on my personal story with domestic violence and being in an abusive relationship several years ago. And part two, I defined domestic violence and went into detail on the types of domestic violence, types of abuse that we more typically see within abusive relationships, abusive environments. And for part three, which is today, I will be talking about the cycle of abuse. As well as giving some additional resources. And I'll be doing subsequent video on healthy relationships versus unhealthy and versus abusive relationships, and really being able to position yourself to identify um, uh, unhealthy patterns and behaviors that you see, especially in romantic relationships. So, a little bit before I get started, a little bit about myself. So, I am the published author of Co-Parenting with Christ, 9 Steps to Achieving Harmony. And I am just about through the publishing process for my upcoming book, All God Needs Is Your Yes. I am also the CEO and founder of Esther's Daughters LLC, which is a faith-based organization that is geared towards single moms of faith, and as well as coming alongside faith-based organizations who serve single moms who either have an existing single moms ministry or program and wanting to revamp it, needing program evaluation, or if they are wanting to start a single moms ministry or program. Then I come in with a 4-class series on what that looks like, and I walk the faith-based organization through that process. I also am a blogger. For those of you who know or don't know, I love to write. And so in my blog, Doing Life with Christ, I share lots of amazing, powerful strategies and tips on how to navigate through career changes and moves, leadership, as well as parenting. I'm definitely 110% all about equipping women and single mamas, especially into positions of leadership. Okay. And I've been, as far as in corporate America, I have been in the helping profession now for 26 years, a long time. And so I have served in the leadership capacity, leadership for about, gosh, it's been maybe 6, 7 years. And now I currently am in management. And so I have the wonderful opportunity and privilege to speak into the lives of and equip the next generation of leaders, which is definitely my heart's desire. And lastly, and most importantly, I have an amazing son, young man who is a college student and actually getting ready to transfer to a university in a few months. So we are definitely excited. And what that looks like is empty nester world for me. But anyhow, that's a little bit about myself. And so I wanted to jump right in, and also a little content advisory. So for those of you who may be listening to this and there are others, little ones in the area or in your room who are within earshot of you, I would strongly suggest that either you go somewhere, go ahead and pause the video, and so that you can go somewhere where the little ones are not near. Okay, because we will be, again, as this series has progressed, discussing some pretty heavy content. Okay, and so not quite sure if they are ready for that, not necessarily age appropriate for our little ones. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is part three. And again, recap. with the first video being my personal journey or my personal story, being in an abusive relationship. And the second part was going into what domestic violence is and the various types of domestic violence. And today I'll be talking about the cycle of abuse. And so, domestic violence, again, it is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship. Again, I say this with every video, so that we can dispel this myth that domestic violence only occurs with with the male being the individual who is doing the abusing, and the female is the victim or survivor. Um, Domestic violence can occur in where the abuse is coming from the male onto the female. It can be coming from the female as a perpetrator and abusing the male. It can be, again, in romantic relationships where the abuse is occurring male to male, female to female, as well as both parties can be engaging in domestic violence where both in different points of the relationship are doing the abusive behavior as well. Domestic violence does not discriminate. So it goes across all levels: socioeconomic status, cultures, religion, educational levels, etc., regions. So again, wanting to dispel the myth that domestic violence has a certain look, a certain type. It does not. It is a learned behavior. So it goes across the board. But yes, domestic violence is a pattern of abusive behavior, and it is meant where one individual, or again, it could be both in different points of the relationship, but in any relationship, platonic as well, not always necessarily a dating relationship or a marital relationship, but it is where one is attempting or wanting to create or maintain control over the other individual. So control, power, authority. And so there are different tactics, if you will, types of abuse in which they go about maintaining or trying to maintain that control. So I want to talk about the cycle of abuse, and depending on, there are different cycles, or I'm sorry, different models of cycle of abuse. One of the primary ones is from psychologist Lenora Walker, and her cycle of abuse is based on a 4-stage process. Now, you will see that over the years that there is some variation, if you will. There are some 5-stage cycle of abuse models as well. But this particular one is seen as one of the foundational models that people continue to use today and apply it as they continue to do work within domestic violence awareness. Okay. So stage 1 is tension building. And so typically, well, I'll share with you what the entire cycle is, and then I'll go into detail. But your stage 1 is tension building. And when you're thinking of a cycle, think of a circle. Okay. So you're thinking of progression, you're thinking of momentum occurring, cycle meaning repetitive. So in your stage 1, you have the tension building. And then in the stage 2, that then moves into the incident or incidents of violence, moving into stage 3, that is the reconciliation stage, and then moving into stage 4, which is your calm stage. So again, this is the 4-stage model. And again, there are variations to that, but this is one of the main foundational models used. And so in your tension building stage, oftentimes, and I have my notes here so I can make sure I'm not forgetting anything, but in this particular stage, you are seeing where the behavior is starting to increase, slowly increase in intensity and in frequency. So what you might see, and again, allow me to share this, that every relationship is different, that every cycle or every type of um, relationship, you may see different types of abuse more so than others. Know that in some cases, you may see one type of abuse in some of the stages, and then you may see another form in another stage. For instance, for tension building stage, you might see, for example, uh, an increase in emotional abuse or psychological abuse in the tension building. And when it comes to stage two, the incident of violence or incidents of violence, then it moves from or progresses from emotional abuse into physical abuse in stage two, or sexual abuse in stage two, before moving into reconciliation and then moving into the calm stage. And then you begin to see emotional abuse rise again, etc. So you might see different forms of abuse in some stages more so than others. Another observation, another thing that you might see is as the cycles continue. So again, cycle meaning that this is repetitive. And again, it looks different and it can look different in different relationships. But let's say the first time that it happened, the first time that the abuse was seen, and the first time that you notice of going through this cycle, it may progress over time. So maybe the fifth time that you have gone through this cycle, now the abuse is even more aggressive. Maybe the amount of time has shortened in between the stages. So it may now be where maybe it was months before moving into the next stage in the cycle. And now you're noticing it's maybe a month and then the stage changes. Maybe it's within days. Okay, so it varies, but it's something to be aware of. So again, in the tension building stage, you are looking at where the behavior is slowly increasing in intensity and frequency. One of the other things that you might see is external stressors. Okay. And so typically, not typically, but you might see where there are stressors from regarding finances, or maybe there was a change in job, maybe they got laid off, maybe they were fired. Maybe there's some other challenges going on where there are external factors and external stressors where the individual who is doing the abuse does not feel as though they have control in the other areas, but in an attempt to gain that sense of control, now they're wanting to exert that control over the individual who they are abusing. Okay. And this is not to make excuses or to justify, but this is to have a better understanding of what this looks like. Okay. Some of the things that you might see in the person who is doing the abusing. And when I say abuser or perpetrator, it is the individual who is doing the abusive behavior. So some things that you might see is irritability. Okay, any little thing may set them off. You have a little one playing in the room, and they get a little loud and excited, and as they're playing, and the individual who is engaging in the abusive behavior, it upsets them very quickly. And so they're wanting the child to be quiet immediately. You may start to see impatience. You may start to see short-temperedness and emotional outbursts. Okay. But what does that mean for the individual who is experiencing the abuse? What does that mean for if there's children, if there's pets as well, who are in the abusive environment? This is meaning that the children that the person who is experiencing the abuse is experiencing a certain level of anxiety because they know that it's coming again. They know that the cycle has begun. Because they're noticing the behavioral changes in the individual. And so now they're walking on eggshells. Now they're wanting the children to walk on eggshells because they don't want anything to tick the individual off, right? And so as you're in the tension, or as the individual's in the tension building stage, they then move into the stage where the incident or incidences of violence occur. And so again, you may start to see where in the tension building stage, where it may be emotional abuse, but then it crosses over into your stage two, with physical abuse or sexual abuse. And again, it varies depending on the relationship on the individual, but you'll see where there is a point where the intensity and the frequency of the behavior, the tension building stage, comes to a point where it literally comes to head. And then there is a massive incident where that is released, or a series of incidences where that is released. And that is your incident or incidences of violence. Okay. And so in that particular stage, you may see a culmination of things. You might see the emotional abuse, the psychological abuse with intimidation, threats of violence. You may see blaming and shaming, physical abuse, sexual abuse, manipulation. Okay. And again, this varies as well. And then as stage two, after that incident or incidences of violence occur, then typically the individual will, and I hate to use the term typical because not all the time is it typical per se, moving into your stage three, and that is your reconciliation stage. Typically, or let me say, oftentimes you will see in the reconciliation stage where the individual who is uh, doing the abusive behavior, engaging in the abusive behavior, may apologize, may show lots of affection, may give a gift or several, may give flowers, may say, you know what, hey, let's go to Disneyland. Let's take the kids, on a trip. I've just been really stressed out. Let's just get away. And I really, I promise that I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to make a change. I want this to work, and I know that I hurt you, and let's move forward. I'm going to get the help. Okay, so that's typically what you'll see in the reconciliation stage, is where they're wanting to make an amends for their behavior and they're apologizing. And then this moves into stage four, which is the calm stage. Okay. And even though the stage is called the calm stage, does not necessarily mean that this is a calm situation to be in, because being in an abusive environment, in an abusive relationship, it's never calming. There's never a calming moment, because you're never knowing how another individual is going to react to a situation, and how that's going to impact you and impact others. But typically in the calm stage, we're seeing where uh, it's starting to move towards that stage one of the tension building again. So you might start to see gaslighting. Okay, you might start to see where they may or may not still be apologetic, but now they're beginning to make excuses, where they're saying, I'm sorry, but if you just hadn't have done this, or if you just didn't say that, or if you didn't wear that, or just so much is going on at work, and it's my boss's fault. That's why I do what I do to you at home. Okay. And so you'll begin to see the language change from apologizing in the reconciliation phase or stage, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it again, to now in the calm stage, everything, uh, it's no longer the full incident of violence, but and they may apologize, but you're now starting to see where now they're starting to make excuses. And one thing that I want to mention here too is that the empty promises of I'm going to get better, I'm going to get help, versus actually being proactive. Are you seeing the fruit of that help, where they truly are um, putting in the work and identifying, recognizing, understanding that I need I need help. Maybe they don't know where they learned the behavior, or in many cases, they've seen it in their family of origin, or some type of abuse, where it was modeled for them, and not having the skills to communicate, not having the skills to articulate, to cope with stressors, to communicate when something is wrong, or to communicate their emotions. And so they communicate by being physically aggressive, abusive. So wanting to be mindful of them being proactive, but also that means too that there's a level of therapy that needs to occur for all those who are involved. That means the individual who is willingness, as well as therapy for the individual who is doing the abusive behavior, but then also for the individuals whom it's impacted. So the spouse, or the individual who is on the other end, the survivor of the abuse, as well as children. Vital that children engage in therapy, especially if they're very young. It may be suggested for them to go through play therapy. If they're adolescents, you may look into group therapy and support groups for yourself, as well as for them. And in the comments below, I will be posting some resources as well. And I'll also be doing subsequent videos again on healthy relationships and boundaries and patterns and red flags, and also sharing some resources for you as well, and how to develop a safety plan. So definitely stay tuned. And unfortunately, if you find yourself, should you find yourself in this situation, or a loved one, especially if you have a loved one or a colleague, a coworker who you're suspicious that they may be in an abusive relationship, definitely not coming from a judgmental place, but definitely being someone whom they can trust, someone whom they can rely on, and share confidential information. And for those of us who are mandated reporters, especially and there's children involved, that does come with another set of responsibility that we have as mandated reporters as well. But again, if you find yourself in this situation, please reach out. And if there is no one in your immediate circle, please reach out to me, and I will make sure to connect with you and help you get the resources that you need, and get you in the right direction, so that way we can help to plan your safety plan to exit that abusive environment, abusive relationship. Okay, so I pray that all of you are well and taking care of yourselves. And feel free to leave me a comment in the message or in the comments below, or DM me for more private message, and we can connect that way. So God bless you, and take care of yourself, and continue to stay tuned with Tips of the Day for Single Moms of Faith. Take care.